The enemy attack came without warning, pinning down the entire SEAL team at the training range. "Give me your rifle," the quiet cleaning girl said to the wounded SEAL commander. "You can't be serious," he replied. "Trust me," she said, and what happened next stunned everyone. Meet Victoria. Ghost Chen, 26 years old, dark hair always pulled back in a simple ponytail, brown eyes that seemed to notice everything while revealing nothing. For 2 years, she had worked as a range maintenance specialist at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, the home of SEAL team training. Every morning at 0500 hours, she arrived to clean the shooting ranges, replace targets, and maintain the equipment that America's elite warriors use to hone their deadly skills. To the SEALs who trained there daily, Victoria was practically invisible. She was just the cleaning girl who swept up their brass, patched bullet holes in target boards, and restocked ammunition. They barely acknowledged her presence, treating her like part of the furniture in their high-stakes world of advanced military training. But what none of them knew was that Victoria Chen carried the bloodline of one of the most legendary snipers in Army Special Forces history. Her grandfather, Master Sergeant David El Fantasma Chen, had been a Green Beret sniper in Vietnam whose 134 confirmed kills made him a legend whispered about in military circles for decades. Victoria's childhood had been spent on her grandfather's ranch in rural Montana, where he had taught her everything about precision shooting that the Army couldn't or wouldn't teach. Every weekend of her youth had been dedicated to learning the art of the rifle, breath control, wind reading, ballistic calculations, and most importantly, the patience to wait for the perfect shot. "Little bird," her grandfather would tell her as they practiced at impossible ranges. "A true sniper is not someone who just shoots accurately. A true sniper is someone who can remain invisible, think like the enemy, and strike when they least expect it. The rifle is just a tool. Your mind is the real weapon." David Chen had been forced to retire from Special Forces after taking shrapnel in his shooting arm during a classified mission in Cambodia. But his knowledge and skills lived on through the granddaughter he trained in secret, knowing that the military establishment would never give a woman the opportunity to use abilities that most men couldn't achieve. Victoria's training had been far more comprehensive than standard military sniper schools provided. Her grandfather had taught her advanced fieldcraft techniques that weren't in any manual, how to read atmospheric conditions that most shooters couldn't detect, how to calculate bullet trajectories through multiple environmental variables, and how to remain motionless for hours while tracking targets through dense vegetation. During her teenage years, Victoria had consistently outshot adult hunters and competitive marksmen who couldn't understand how a young woman could achieve accuracy that eluded experienced shooters. Her grandfather had entered her in civilian marksmanship competitions, where she competed under an assumed name, winning championships that would have attracted military attention if anyone had known her real identity. At 18, Victoria had scored perfect marks on every shooting test the military administered, but bureaucratic obstacles and institutional bias had prevented her from accessing the sniper training she deserved.
Work your way through.
Male recruiters had suggested more appropriate military occupational specialties, assuming that her interest in precision shooting was a temporary phase rather than a calling that defined her entire life. Victoria had tried to enlist as an Army sniper after graduating from Montana State University with a degree in ballistics and mechanical engineering. Her test scores were perfect, her marksmanship evaluations broke records, and her understanding of advanced shooting techniques impressed even veteran instructors. But bureaucratic barriers and institutional bias had relegated her to support roles rather than the combat positions her abilities deserved. The discrimination hadn't been overt, but it had been persistent. Training opportunities that should have gone to the most qualified candidates were consistently awarded to men who scored lower on every measurable criterion. Victoria's innovations in ballistic calculation and environmental assessment were studied and implemented, but the credit went to male instructors who had the institutional credibility to present her work as their own. So she had taken the job at Coronado, reasoning that being around elite military training was better than being completely shut out of the world she belonged in. For 2 years, she had watched SEALs practice the same techniques her grandfather had taught her, knowing she could outshoot most of them, but having no way to prove it. During her time at Coronado, Victoria had used her access to study every aspect of the training programs that she was excluded from participating in. She memorized tactical procedures, analyzed shooting techniques, and identified weaknesses in conventional training methods that her grandfather's unconventional approach could address. Her colleagues in range maintenance had no idea that she spent her off-duty hours practicing advanced shooting techniques at remote locations throughout Southern California. Victoria had established relationships with civilian shooting ranges where she could train without military supervision, consistently achieving scores that would have qualified her for the most elite sniper programs if anyone had been willing to look past her gender and current job classification. Commander Ryan Steele Patterson was everything Victoria was not, celebrated, respected, and given every opportunity to excel. At 38 years old, he led SEAL Team 5 with a reputation built on 16 years of successful operations in the world's most dangerous environments. Patterson commanded respect through demonstrated competence and natural leadership, earning the loyalty of men who followed him into situations where lesser warriors would falter. Patterson had built his career during an era when special operations units were exclusively male domains. His experience and tactical expertise were unquestionable, but his worldview had been shaped by decades of working in environments where women were support personnel rather than combat assets. This wasn't malicious sexism, it was institutional blindness that prevented him from recognizing capabilities that didn't fit established patterns. Patterson knew Victoria existed. She maintained the ranges where his team trained, but to him she was just efficient support personnel. Professional, reliable, but not someone whose tactical input would be valued in a community where combat experience was the only currency that mattered. He had never bothered to learn her background, her qualifications, or her potential contributions beyond her assigned duties. The relationship between Patterson and Victoria exemplified the broader challenge of institutional change in military culture. He respected competence and dedication, but his definition of both was limited by experiences that hadn't included working with women in combat roles. Victoria represented capabilities that he couldn't recognize because he had never been trained to look for them. The training exercise that changed everything had been designed as advanced urban warfare preparation. Patterson's team was conducting close-quarters battle drills and precision shooting exercises when the peaceful morning at Coronado was shattered by an attack that no one had anticipated. The exercise had been planned as part of pre-deployment training for an upcoming mission in the Middle East. Patterson's team was scheduled to deploy within 6 weeks, and this training cycle was designed to ensure they were prepared for the complex urban environments where they would be operating. The irony that they were attacked during training for overseas operations was lost on no one who survived the engagement. At 0847 hours, mortar rounds began falling on the base with devastating accuracy. The first explosions struck the main administration building, sending smoke and debris across the training areas. Within seconds, small arms fire erupted from multiple directions as enemy infiltrators engaged security forces throughout the facility. "Contact! Contact!" Patterson's radio crackled with reports from across the base. "Multiple hostiles have penetrated the perimeter. All training exercises are suspended. This is not a drill." The attack had been planned with military precision, suggesting that enemy forces had conducted extensive reconnaissance of the base layout and training schedules. The timing coincided with a shift change in security personnel, and the attackers had positioned themselves to exploit blind spots in the base's defensive coverage. Victoria had been replacing targets at the 800-meter range when the attack began. The first mortar explosion knocked her to the ground, showering her with dirt and concrete fragments. As she struggled to her feet, she could see muzzle flashes from enemy positions that had been established on the hills overlooking the base. Her first instinct wasn't to seek shelter like other civilian personnel. Instead, Victoria's training kicked in as she automatically began conducting tactical assessment of the enemy positions, identifying firing angles, estimating distances, and calculating the resources that would be needed to neutralize the threats she could observe. Patterson's team was trapped in the open, caught between the range facilities and enemy positions that commanded high ground on three sides. The SEALs were using whatever cover they could find: concrete barriers, equipment sheds, abandoned vehicles. But they were pinned down by coordinated fire from enemies who had clearly planned this attack in detail. "Steele, this is base command." Patterson's radio squawked with urgent instructions. "Enemy forces have breached perimeter security in multiple locations. Estimate 12 to 15 hostiles with crew-served weapons and sniper support. QRF is en route, but ETA is 15 minutes. 15 minutes might as well have been 15 hours. Patterson could see his team's tactical situation deteriorating by the minute. They were taking accurate fire from enemy snipers who had positioned themselves with perfect fields of fire across the training ranges. Two of his men were already wounded, and their ammunition was being depleted by the defensive fire they were forced to maintain. Petty Officer Williams, Patterson's designated marksman, had taken a bullet through his shoulder and was losing blood rapidly. Petty Officer Thompson, the team's communications specialist, had suffered shrapnel wounds to his legs and was unable to move effectively. The rest of the team was pinned down by enemy fire that was becoming more accurate as the attackers adjusted their positions. That's when Patterson noticed something that made him question everything he thought he knew about the woman who cleaned their ranges. While his elite warriors were pinned down by enemy fire, Victoria Chen was moving through the chaos with purpose and confidence that seemed completely out of place for civilian support personnel. She wasn't running for shelter like other non-combatants. She wasn't panicking or seeking protection from the nearest SEAL. Instead, she was low-crawling toward the range equipment storage area with tactical awareness that reminded Patterson of his most experienced operators. "What the hell is she doing?" muttered Petty Officer Williams, Patterson's wounded sniper who was bleeding heavily behind a concrete barrier. Victoria reached the storage area and emerged with a Mark 11 sniper rifle, the same weapon system that Williams had been using before he was wounded. But instead of running toward the SEALs for protection, she was moving toward an observation tower that would give her elevated position over the entire engagement area. Patterson made a decision that his tactical training said was insane. He was going to find out what the cleaning girl thought she could accomplish with a sniper rifle. "Chen!" he called out as enemy bullets sparked off the concrete near his position. "What do you think you're doing?" Victoria looked at him with eyes that showed no fear, only cold calculation. "Commander, I can eliminate the enemy sniper positions from the tower, but I need your spotting scope and radio frequency." Patterson stared at her as if she had just claimed she could fly. "You're civilian personnel. You can't—" "Sir, your sniper is wounded, your team is pinned down, and backup is 15 minutes away. You can either let me help, or you can watch your men die while we wait for the cavalry." The matter-of-fact way she delivered this assessment, combined with the tactical awareness she was demonstrating, made Patterson reconsider everything he thought he knew about Victoria Chen. The woman who had been invisible for 2 years was suddenly the only person on the range who seemed to have a plan. Enemy fire intensified, forcing Patterson to duck as bullets shattered the concrete above his head. When he looked up, Victoria was already moving toward the tower with the Mark 11, her movement so fluid and tactically sound that she looked like she belonged in combat gear rather than maintenance coveralls. "Williams," Patterson called to his wounded sniper, "give her your spotting scope and radio headset. Sir, she's not qualified." "Williams, I don't care if she's qualified. I care if she can shoot. Look around. We're about to be overrun by hostiles who know exactly where we are. If she thinks she can help, I'm willing to let her try." Patterson made the hardest decision of his command career. He was going to trust the range cleaning girl with the lives of his entire team. Victoria accepted the spotting scope and radio equipment with hands that weren't shaking. As she prepared to climb the observation tower, Patterson grabbed her arm and looked directly into her eyes. "Chen, if you can't do this, tell me now. I won't send you up there to get killed trying to be something you're not." Victoria's response came in a voice so calm and confident that it sent chills down Patterson's spine. "Commander, trust me. This is what I was born to do. What happened over the next 20 minutes redefined everything Patterson thought he knew about training, qualifications, and the difference between credentials and capability. Victoria climbed the observation tower under enemy fire, moving with tactical awareness that kept her invisible to the snipers who were systematically targeting his team. Once she reached the elevated position, her transformation from maintenance worker to precision shooter was so complete that Patterson began to understand he was witnessing something extraordinary. Through his binoculars, Patterson could see Victoria setting up the Mark 11 with the kind of methodical precision that took years to develop. Her shooting position was textbook perfect. Her scope adjustments were made with the confidence of someone who understood ballistics at a level that most snipers never achieved. "Overwatch, this is ground," Patterson called on the radio frequency Victoria was monitoring. "Target priority is the sniper position at 2 o'clock, approximately 600 meters. He's been keeping us pinned down for the last 10 minutes. Ground, Overwatch. I have visual on target. Calculating wind drift and elevation. Stand by." Victoria's voice over the radio was steady and professional, using terminology that military snipers trained for months to master. But more than just using the right words, she sounded like someone who understood the tactical situation and had a plan to solve it. The first shot came 30 seconds later. 600 meters away, the enemy sniper who had been terrorizing Patterson's team dropped instantly, his rifle tumbling from the position that had been perfectly concealed until Victoria's bullet found its mark. "Holy shit," whispered Petty Officer Davis, one of Patterson's youngest SEALs. "She actually made that shot." But Victoria wasn't finished. Patterson watched through his binoculars as she smoothly transitioned to her second target, another enemy sniper positioned on a different hilltop who'd been firing at the base's main defensive positions. The second shot came 45 seconds after the first, another enemy sniper eliminated with surgical precision that would have impressed instructors at the Navy's elite sniper schools. "Ground, Overwatch, 2 targets down, identifying additional threats." Patterson keyed his radio with hands that were beginning to shake. Not from fear, but from the realization that the woman who had been invisible for 2 years was systematically dismantling an enemy force that had his elite team pinned down. "Overwatch, ground. Outstanding shooting. Continue engaging targets of opportunity." What followed was a masterclass in precision marksmanship that Patterson would remember for the rest of his career. Victoria identified and eliminated enemy positions that his team hadn't even detected, using shooting techniques that demonstrated training far beyond anything the military taught in conventional courses. Her third target was an enemy machine gunner who had been suppressing the base's main entrance, preventing reinforcements from reaching the training area. The shot required her to calculate bullet drop and wind drift for a target at 750 meters who was partially concealed behind concrete barriers. The bullet found its mark with mathematical precision. Her fourth and fifth targets were enemy spotters who had been directing fire for the mortar team that was shelling the base. Victoria eliminated both spotters with shots that required her to predict their movement patterns and lead moving targets across broken terrain. By the time she fired her sixth shot, the enemy attack was collapsing. The coordinated assault that had pinned down an entire SEAL team was falling apart as their key personnel were systematically eliminated by someone they had never seen coming. "Ground, Overwatch. I count 6 confirmed enemy KIA. Remaining hostiles appear to be withdrawing to the northeast. Recommend pursuit if you have available assets." Patterson stared up at the observation tower where Victoria was calmly conducting post-engagement procedures, securing her weapon and preparing to climb down. The woman who cleaned their targets had just conducted a precision shooting exhibition that saved his entire team. When Victoria reached the bottom of the tower, Patterson was waiting for her with his entire team. The SEALs who had barely acknowledged her existence for 2 years were now looking at her with expressions that mixed amazement, respect, and confusion. "Chen," Patterson said quietly, "I need you to explain to me what just happened." Victoria handed him the Mark 11 rifle and removed the radio headset, her demeanor returning to the quiet professionalism that had made her invisible for so long. "Sir, I just did what needed to be done." "No," Patterson replied firmly. What you just did was conduct precision shooting that most military snipers couldn't achieve. Where did you learn to shoot like that? Victoria looked at the SEAL commander who had spent 2 years treating her like furniture, then at his team members who were alive because of skills they never knew she possessed. My grandfather, Master Sergeant David Chen, Army Special Forces sniper, Vietnam. He taught me everything the military wouldn't. The silence that followed lasted almost a minute as Patterson processed what he had just learned. The woman who had been cleaning their ranges was the granddaughter of one of the most legendary snipers in Special Forces history, trained from childhood in techniques that exceeded anything his team had ever encountered. Chen, Patterson said finally, why didn't you ever tell us you could shoot? Victoria's response carried 2 years of frustration and invisible expertise. Sir, when would I have told you? You never asked. To all of you, I was just the cleaning girl who replaced your targets. Nobody was interested in what else I might be able to do. The quick reaction force arrived 15 minutes later to find the enemy attack completely neutralized and a SEAL team that had been fundamentally changed by discovering the warrior who had been hiding in plain sight among them. The after-action reports from the Coronado attack became classified case studies examined by special operations commands throughout the military. Victoria's shooting performance was analyzed as a perfect example of precision marksmanship under combat pressure, demonstrating capabilities that challenged conventional assumptions about training and qualification. Patterson's recommendation for Victoria's immediate commissioning as a naval officer was fast-tracked through channels that normally took months to navigate. Her performance had been so exceptional that senior commanders wanted to understand how someone with her capabilities had been overlooked by the military's talent identification systems. 6 months later, Victoria Chen was offered direct commission as a Navy officer and assignment to the military's most elite sniper programs. But more importantly, she never again had to prove that she belonged in the community of warriors who had finally learned to see her. Commander Patterson became her strongest advocate, frequently telling other officers, Chen didn't just save my team that day. She taught us that the most dangerous assumption we can make is thinking we know everything about the people around us. The relationship between Patterson and Victoria evolved from commander and support staff to mutual respect between professionals who understood that excellence transcended traditional boundaries. Patterson learned to value tactical input from sources he had previously overlooked, while Victoria learned to work within institutional structures that were slowly adapting to recognize capabilities that didn't fit conventional patterns. Today, Lieutenant Commander Victoria Ghost Chen runs the Navy's Advanced Marksmanship Training Program, teaching both male and female snipers that excellence has nothing to do with expectations and everything to do with preparation, meeting opportunity. Have you ever been invisible to people who didn't bother to learn what you were really capable of? Victoria's story reminds us that the most valuable assets are often the ones we overlook because they don't fit our preconceptions about where talent comes from. The SEALs who treated her like furniture learned that true capability doesn't announce itself, it simply performs when performance matters most. Sometimes the most elite warriors are the ones cleaning up after the people who think they're elite. If you believe that real strength often hides behind humble circumstances, share this story. Because somewhere, someone extraordinary is being overlooked by people who can't see past their own assumptions about what greatness looks like. Victoria Chen didn't just clean the ranges, she was forged by them, waiting for the moment when invisible expertise would become the difference between life and death. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.